Black lawyer's seat stolen by white man. Seconds later, flight gets grounded. Get up. Pal, I don't think you know how the world works. I'm sitting here because I belong here, and you're standing there because, well, take a look in the mirror. The smirk on Wyatt Cole's face was sharp enough to cut glass, but he didn't see the storm gathering in Clay Wilder's eyes. He didn't know that the seat he just stole was the trigger for a catastrophe that would ground the entire flight, ruin a fortune, and prove that the most dangerous man in the room isn't the one shouting, it's the one taking notes. The air inside the first-class cabin of Flight 177 to London was chilled, scented with that specific manufactured crispness that smelled of expensive leather and sanitized luxury. It was a smell Clay Wilder usually associated with victory. Today, however, as he stepped across the threshold of the aircraft, adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke charcoal suit, it smelled like a challenge. Clay checked his boarding pass for the third time, a habit born of a meticulous mind. Seat 1A, the bulkhead window. It was the prime spot, the one he had booked 6 months ago as a reward for closing the Kensington merger. He was tired. His bones felt heavy, the kind of exhaustion that settles deep in the marrow after an 80-hour work week. He needed champagne, he needed the noise-canceling headphones, and mostly, he needed the silence of 1A. He moved down the aisle, his Toomey carry-on gliding silently over the carpet. He stopped. Seat 1A was occupied. The man sprawling in the seat looked like he was trying to consume the space by sheer force of will. He was large, broad-shouldered, wearing a linen jacket that cost more than most cars but looked like it had been slept in. His legs were stretched out, blocking the aisle access, and he was already sipping a pre-flight scotch, the amber liquid catching the cabin light. This was Wyatt Cole. Clay didn't know the name yet, but he knew the type. The jaw was square and dusted with aggressive stubble, the eyes hidden behind aviator sunglasses despite the dim cabin lighting. Clay took a breath, centering himself. He was a partner at Wilder & Associates. He de-escalated corporate wars for a living. This was just a seating error. "Excuse me," Clay said, his voice a smooth baritone, polished by years of courtroom litigation. "I believe you're in my seat. 1A. The man didn't move. He didn't even turn his head. He just swirled the ice in his glass, the clinking sound unnervingly loud in the quiet cabin. Clay waited 3 seconds, the courteous amount of time, before speaking again, slightly louder. "Sir, you are in seat 1A. I have the boarding pass right here." Wyatt Cole slowly lowered his sunglasses to the bridge of his nose. His eyes were a pale, watery blue, bloodshot and dismissive. He looked Clay up and down, starting at the polished Oxfords and ending at Clay's face. The inspection was slow, deliberate, and insulting. "I'm comfortable," Wyatt said. His voice was gravelly, carrying the faint slur of someone who had started drinking in the lounge hours ago. "Comfort isn't the issue," Clay said, keeping his smile fixed but freezing at the edges. "The issue is that I purchased that seat. If there's been a mistake with the booking, we can call an attendant, but for now, I need you to move." "No mistake," Wyatt said, shifting his weight and settling deeper into the leather. "I saw this seat was open when I walked on. I liked it. I sat in it. Possession is 9/10 of the law, isn't that right? You look like you know the law. Or maybe you just dress like it." The microaggression hung in the air, toxic and heavy. Clay felt a muscle in his jaw twitch. He had dealt with men like Wyatt his entire life, men who viewed the world as a buffet laid out specifically for their appetite. "Possession implies right, sir," Clay corrected, his tone dropping an octave. "You are trespassing. Now please gather your things." "Or what?" Wyatt chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "You gonna call the flight marshal? Look around, pal. Do you really think anyone is going to move me for you?" Clay glanced around the cabin. Several passengers were already seated, studiously ignoring the confrontation. In 2F, an older woman with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun was watching them over the top of a fashion magazine. This was Magnolia Pierce. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and unreadable. She didn't look away when Clay caught her gaze. She merely raised an eyebrow, as if waiting to see what he would do. Behind her, in 3C, a younger woman with striking green hair and a phone already held horizontally was recording. Briella Stone. She was practically vibrating with anticipation, her thumb hovering over the record button. Clay turned his attention back to Wyatt. "I'm not asking again." "Good," Wyatt snapped, his demeanor shifting from lazy to aggressive in a heartbeat. "Because I'm done listening. Go find an empty seat in the back. I hear row 30 has extra legroom if you're short enough." Clay didn't move. He pressed the call button overhead. The chime echoed through the cabin. Moments later, a flight attendant hurried over. Her name tag read, Selena. She looked young, frazzled, and already exhausted. She took in the scene, the standing black man in the impeccable suit, the sprawling white man with the scotch, and Clay saw the hesitation in her eyes. It was the hesitation of someone who didn't want trouble, someone who just wanted the plane doors closed and the day over. "Is there a problem, gentlemen?" Selena asked, her voice pitched high with forced cheerfulness. "This gentleman," Clay said, gesturing to Wyatt, "is in my seat, 1A. Here is my boarding pass." He presented the mobile pass, the QR code stark and undeniable. Selena looked at the pass, then at Wyatt. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass, please?" Wyatt waved a hand dismissively. "I misplaced it. Look, honey. Does it matter? The seat was empty. I'm a Diamond Medallion member. Just find him another spot. I'm not moving. My back is acting up and I need the bulkhead." "Sir, if this isn't your assigned seat," Selena started, but her voice lacked authority. "I said I'm not moving." Wyatt slammed his glass down on the armrest, causing amber liquid to splash onto the pristine leather. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who my firm represents? If you delay this flight trying to shuffle me around, I will have your job. I will have this whole crew grounded. Do you understand?" The threat was loud enough to carry to the cockpit. Selena flinched. She looked at Clay, her eyes pleading. She was terrified, not of the rules, but of the man who clearly had the money and the arrogance to ruin her week. "Sir," Selena whispered to Clay, turning her back to Wyatt, "please, the flight is fully booked, but maybe we can find something else? I don't want to cause a scene." "I'm not the one causing the scene, Selena," Clay said softly. "He is thefting a service I paid for. If you let him stay, you are validating that theft." I know, she stammered. "But the captain, he just wants to leave on time. We have a tight slot, please." Clay looked at Wyatt, who was now ignoring them entirely, scrolling through his phone with a smug satisfaction that radiated off him in waves. He had won. He knew he had won because the system was designed to protect the loudest voice, the deepest pocket, the most entitled presence. But Clay Wilder was not a man who lost. He was a man who waited. "Fine," Clay said, his voice loud enough for the camera in row 3 to pick up. "I will move, but let the record show that I am doing so under duress and that this airline is in breach of contract." Wyatt laughed. "Send me the bill, counselor." Clay leaned down, bringing his face inches from Wyatt's. The smell of scotch was overpowering. "Careful, Mr. Cole. Wyatt Cole. Careful, Mr. Cole," Clay whispered. "You never know when the ground might shift beneath you." He turned and followed a relieved Selena toward the back of the first-class cabin, his mind already racing, cataloging, and preparing for war. The humiliation was a physical weight, heavy and suffocating. Clay was led past the lie-flat suites, past the champagne service that was already beginning for the other passengers, to the very last row of the first-class section. It wasn't economy, but it was seat 4D, an aisle seat right next to the galley and the lavatory. The seat didn't recline fully. The wall behind it prevented that. Every time the toilet flushed, he would hear it. Every time the crew prepared a meal, he would smell it. It was a seat for last-minute upgrades and non-revenue staff. It was not the seat of a senior partner. Selina looked apologetic as she took his coat. "I can bring you a drink right away, Mr. Wilder, whatever you want. On the house." "Sparkling water. No ice," Clay said, his tone clipped. He didn't blame her, not entirely, but she was an instrument of the injustice, and he couldn't offer her warmth right now. He sat down, the leather feeling stiff compared to the plush memory foam of 1A. From his vantage point, he could see the back of Wyatt Cole's head. The man was laughing now, talking loudly on his phone, likely bragging about the conquest. Clay pulled out his own phone. He had work to do. He wasn't going to sue for the price of the ticket. That was small claims. That was petty. Clay Wilder didn't do petty. He did nuclear. He opened his secure messaging app and typed a name: Elias Thorne. Thorne was a private investigator who owed Clay 3 favors and a felony charge reduction. Need a run on a name immediately. Wyatt Cole. Currently on Flight 177 to London. Find me everything. Debts, warrants, current employment, marital status. I have 15 minutes before doors close. He hit send. Across the aisle, in 4F, sat a young man with nervous energy, tapping his foot incessantly. Clay ignored him and looked toward the front. The captain had emerged from the cockpit. He was a tall man with silver hair and the confident stride of a pilot who had flown since the Cold War. This was Captain Everett Rhodes. Rhodes stopped at 1A. Clay watched intently. He expected the captain to set things right. The captain was the ultimate authority on a vessel. Rhodes leaned in. Wyatt looked up, said something, and laughed. Rhodes didn't laugh, but he didn't point to the door either. He placed a hand on Wyatt's shoulder, a familiar, almost fraternal gesture, and nodded. Then he turned and walked back to the cockpit, his eyes scanning the cabin, but sliding right over Clay in 4D. Clay felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. They know each other. This wasn't just entitlement. This was cronyism. Wyatt Cole wasn't a random jerk. He was a connected jerk. That made him more dangerous, but it also made the fall much harder. Clay's phone buzzed. Elias worked fast. Wyatt Cole, VP of Logistics for Harlan Tech. Big money but liquidity issues. Gambling debts in Vegas and Macau. Currently under internal audit for misappropriation of funds. Also, Clay... There's a flag on his passport from a customized watch list. Not a no-fly, but a notify authorities on departure tag. Why is he on your plane? Clay stared at the screen. A notify on departure tag. That was usually reserved for flight risks involved in white-collar crime investigations or high-level corporate espionage. If Wyatt was leaving the country, he might be fleeing. And Captain Rhodes just gave him a pat on the shoulder. A plan began to form in Clay's mind. It was risky. It bordered on malicious. But he looked at the back of Wyatt's head, at the arrogant tilt of his neck, and he thought about the "look in the mirror" comment. Clay began to type again, this time drafting an email to the FAA field office and a blind copy to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. He didn't send it yet. He needed more leverage. In 3C, Briella Stone was still holding her phone. She had turned it around and was whispering a commentary into the mic, her eyes darting back to Clay. She sensed the story. Clay caught her eye and gave a nearly imperceptible nod. He wanted her recording. He wanted witnesses. Magnolia Pierce in 2F had put down her magazine. She had rotated her body slightly so she could see both Wyatt and Clay. She caught Clay's eye. She didn't smile, but she raised a hand and tapped her watch, then pointed at Wyatt. It was a cryptic gesture. Time is running out? Or watch him. The intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Rhodes. We're just finishing up some final paperwork, and we should be pushing back in about 10 minutes. Flight time to London is 6 hours and 40 minutes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the service." Selina came by with the water. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Selina," Clay said quietly, stopping her, "did the captain say why he let Mr. Cole stay in my seat?" Selina looked terrified. She leaned in, pretending to adjust his napkin. "Mr. Cole is..." He's the nephew of the airline's CEO or his godson. Something like that. The captain said we don't touch him. I'm so sorry, sir. Don't be sorry, Selina, Clay said, his voice turning into ice. Just be ready. Ready for what? For the turbulence, Clay said. He looked at the timestamp on his phone. He had the information. He had the motivation. Now he just needed the trigger. Wyatt Cole stood up to use the lavatory. He walked down the aisle, swaying slightly, a glass of scotch still in his hand against regulations. As he passed Clay, he paused. Cozy back here, Wyatt sneered. Smells a bit like second place. Clay looked up, his face a mask of calm. Enjoy the seat, Wyatt. I hope it's worth the price. I didn't pay a dime, pal, Wyatt laughed, moving toward the bathroom door. Oh, you will, Clay murmured as the door clicked shut. You will. Clay unlocked his phone. He navigated to the airline's mobile app, to the feedback section, and then to the Department of Transportation's consumer complaint portal. But those were slow. He needed something immediate. He opened his email draft to the FBI Financial Crimes Division. Subject, urgent, flight risk, Wyatt Cole departing JFK Flight 127. He attached the photo he had discreetly taken of Wyatt in seat 1A. He added a note about the large briefcase Wyatt had shoved into the overhead bin, a briefcase he had been clutching a little too tightly. Clay's thumb hovered over the send button. If he did this, the flight would be delayed. Everyone would be inconvenienced. He would be the villain to every other passenger who just wanted to get to London. Then he heard the flush of the toilet. Wyatt stepped out, not bothering to close the door behind him completely. He bumped into Selina, spilling a drop of his drink on her uniform. Watch it, sweetheart, Wyatt snapped. That was it. The disrespect was total. The karma had to be total, too. Clay hit send. The doors were closed. The heavy thud of the airlock ceiling shut reverberated through the frame of the Boeing 777. The cabin pressurized, causing ears to pop. The engines whined to life, a low, powerful hum that vibrated the floorboards. Clay sat in 4D, his phone now in airplane mode, though the message had already been sent. The data packet was flying through the ether, bouncing off towers, landing in a server in Washington, D.C. The plane pushed back. The safety video began to play. Wyatt Cole was back in 1A, likely reclining, feeling the master of his universe. The aircraft taxied for a long time. 10 minutes, 20. JFK was busy. But this felt different. They weren't in a queue. They were moving to a holding pad. Clay counted the seconds. Suddenly, the plane came to a shuddering halt. It wasn't the gentle stop of a queue. It was a hard brake. The engines spooled down. The hum died. Silence filled the cabin, heavier than the pressurized air. Then the air conditioning cut out. The sudden loss of white noise was jarring. You could hear the rustle of clothes, the cough of a passenger in row 2, and the loud, annoyed voice of Wyatt Cole. What the hell? Why are we stopping? Wyatt barked. The intercom clicked. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. We've, had a warning light on the auxiliary power unit. We're going to have to hold here on the tarmac while maintenance takes a look. Hopefully it's just a sensor error. We apologize for the delay. A collective groan went through the cabin. Clay didn't groan. He smiled. It wasn't a mechanical error. The maintenance crew that was coming wouldn't be wearing overalls. The heat began to rise. Without the APU or the main engines running the AC packs, the metal tube sitting in the July sun began to bake. The air grew stale quickly. Hey! Wyatt yelled, standing up. It's getting hot in here. Turn the air on. Selina hurried up the aisle. Sir, please sit down. The captain has turned off the power to reset the systems. I don't care about the systems. I'm sweating through a $3,000 suit, Wyatt shouted. Get me another drink. I can't serve while we are on the ground and the seatbelt sign is on, Selina said, her voice trembling but firmer than before. Do you want me to call my uncle? Wyatt threatened. Call him? A voice cut through the tension. It wasn't Selina. It was Clay. He spoke from row 4, his voice projecting clearly to the front. "Go ahead, Wyatt. Call your uncle. Ask him if he knows about the audit." Wyatt froze. He turned slowly, peering over the headrest of seat 1A. "What did you say?" Clay unbuckled his seatbelt. The sign was on, but the plane wasn't moving. He stood up, smoothing his jacket. "I said," Clay enunciated, walking slowly up the aisle, "ask him if he knows why you're really flying to London today. Ask him if he knows about the discrepancies in the logistics ledger." The cabin went deadly silent. Briella Stone in 3C had her phone raised high, filming openly now. Magnolia Pierce in 2F lowered her sunglasses, a gleam of predatory interest in her eyes. Wyatt's face flushed a deep, ugly red. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm the man whose seat you stole," Clay said, stopping 3 rows back. "And I'm the man who knows that people who steal seats usually steal other things too. It's a pathology, Wyatt. Entitlement is a symptom of a rot." "You're crazy," Wyatt spat. "Sit down before I have you arrested." "I don't think I'm the one who needs to worry about arrests," Clay said calmly. He pointed out the window. 2 black SUVs were tearing across the tarmac, flanking an airport police cruiser. They were heading straight for Flight 177. Wyatt looked out the window. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like a physical blow. The sweat on his forehead wasn't from the heat anymore. "What did you do?" Wyatt whispered, his voice cracking. "I just made a few inquiries," Clay said. "See, when you took my seat, you made me curious. And when a lawyer gets curious, things get uncovered. I found it interesting that a man with significant gambling debts was flying to a non-extradition friendly banking haven via London on a ticket purchased 24 hours ago." "You don't know anything," Wyatt stammered, his eyes darting to the overhead bin where his briefcase was. "I know you're a flight risk, Wyatt," Clay said, "and judging by the welcoming committee outside, the FBI agrees with me." Captain Rhodes opened the cockpit door, looking furious. "What is going on back here? Who is shouting?" "Captain," Clay said, nodding respectfully, "I believe your mechanical issue has arrived." Rhodes looked out the window. He saw the SUVs. He saw the flashing lights. He looked at Wyatt, and for the first time, the captain looked scared. "Wyatt?" Rhodes asked, his voice low. "What is in that bag?" Wyatt didn't answer. He lunged. He didn't lunge at Clay. He lunged at the emergency exit door handle next to seat 1A. "Don't!" Selena screamed. "Sit down!" Clay shouted, bracing himself. Wyatt's hand grabbed the lever. Panic had overridden logic. He thought he could pop the slide and run across the tarmac. It was madness. It was desperation. But before he could pull it, a cane hooked around his ankle. Magnolia Pierce, the older woman in 2F, had moved with shocking speed. She yanked the cane back hard. Wyatt crashed to the floor, his chin hitting the carpet with a sickening thud. "Sit down, you idiot," Magnolia said, her voice like gravel and silk. "You'll depressurize the cabin and cost me a fortune in delay fees." Wyatt groaned, rolling over, blood trickling from his lip. He looked up to see Clay standing over him. "You stole my seat," Clay said, looking down at the sprawled man. "But you just gave me the satisfaction of a lifetime." A heavy pounding echoed against the aircraft door. The jet bridge was moving back in. The authorities were boarding. Clay looked at Selena. "I think seat 1A is about to become available again." But the drama was far from over. As the knocking grew louder, Clay noticed something. Captain Rhodes wasn't opening the main cabin door. He was backing into the cockpit. He was locking it. Clay's eyes narrowed. Why would the pilot lock himself in when the police were at the gate? Unless Wyatt wasn't the only one running. "Captain!" Clay shouted, moving toward the front. But the cockpit door clicked shut. The plane was grounded. The police were outside. A criminal was on the floor. And now, the pilot had barricaded himself in the controls. Clay looked at the camera Briella was holding. "Are you getting this?" he asked. Every second, Briella whispered, her eyes wide. Clay Wilder straightened his tie. The seat was the least of his problems now. The real flight hadn't even begun. The sound of the cockpit door locking was a distinct mechanical thunk that echoed with finality in the tense cabin. It was a sound that shouldn't happen on the ground, not when the authorities were banging on the fuselage. Clay Wilder stood in the galley, inches from the reinforced door. His heart, usually a metronome of steady rhythm, skipped a beat. He turned to Selina. "Does he have a secondary egress?" Clay asked, his voice low and urgent. Selina was trembling, pressing a napkin to her mouth. The window. He can open the side window. But why? Why would Captain Rhodes lock us out? On the floor, Wyatt Cole was groaning, trying to push himself up. Magnolia Pierce still had the tip of her cane pressed firmly into his solar plexus. "Stay down, boy," Magnolia commanded. She looked at Clay. "The pilot isn't protecting this idiot. He's protecting himself. I recognized him." Clay crouched next to her, keeping one eye on the cockpit door. "Recognized who? Rhodes?" "Rhodes," Magnolia nodded. 30 years ago, he flew private charters for my husband's mining conglomerate in Nevada. He was a good pilot, but he had sticky fingers. We fired him for smuggling untaxed gold in the landing gear wells. If he's locking that door, it means whatever is in Wyatt's briefcase. Rhodes is in on it. Clay looked at the overhead bin above seat 1A, the briefcase. "Selina," Clay said, "get the key to the overhead manual release. Now." Outside, the pounding on the main cabin door intensified. "This is the Port Authority Police. Open the door immediately." "We can't," Selina shouted back, her voice cracking. "The bridge isn't fully connected. The captain moved the plane forward." Clay realized she was right. Rhodes had lurched the plane just a few feet, enough to misalign the jet bridge, preventing the door from opening safely without risking a fall to the tarmac. It was a stalling tactic. Clay grabbed the manual release tool Selina handed him. He popped the latch on the bin above 1A. The black leather briefcase tumbled out. It was heavy. Heavier than it should be for papers. Wyatt, seeing the bag fall, found a surge of desperate strength. He shoved Magnolia's cane aside and scrambled on his hands and knees. "That's mine! You can't touch that! Fourth Amendment!" Clay put a foot on the briefcase. "First off, the Fourth Amendment protects you from the government, not from a fellow passenger you defrauded. Second, I'm securing evidence of a crime in progress." "Give it to me!" Wyatt screamed, lunging. Clay sidestepped. He wasn't a fighter, he was a runner, but he knew leverage. He used Wyatt's momentum against him, guiding the larger man into the bulkhead wall. Wyatt hit with a dull thud and slumped down, winded. Clay knelt and unzipped the bag. It wasn't money, it was hard drives, dozens of them, stacked in anti-static foam. And underneath them, a single thick file folder marked Harlan Tech, Project Omega, Eyes Only. "Corporate espionage," Clay whispered. "You're not just embezzling money, Wyatt. You're stealing the company." "It's my work," Wyatt wheezed, clutching his ribs. "I built that code. They were going to cut me out." "So you stole it," Clay said. "And Rhodes? Is he your mule?" Wyatt laughed, a bloody manic sound. "Rhodes is the buyer's delivery man. I just had to get it on the plane. He was going to drop it in London during the layover. Why do you think I needed 1A? It's the only seat with the pass-through panel to the crew rest area." Clay stared at the bulkhead wall. He checked the paneling. Sure enough, there was a small maintenance hatch concealed behind the magazine rack of seat 1A. Wyatt had stolen the seat not for the leg room, but to pass the drives to Rhodes without walking through the cabin. "The captain is destroying the log," Magnolia said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. "If he wipes the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, he creates a gap in the evidence." "Selina," Clay barked, "get on the interphone. Tell the police to breach. Tell them the pilot is hostile." Selina grabbed the handset. Captain Rhodes! Captain! Please! There was no answer. Then the plane lurched again. The engines whined. Not a startup whine, but a high-pitched scream of thrust. "He's trying to move!" Briella shouted from row 3, her camera steady despite the chaos. "He's trying to turn the plane!" "On the ground?" Clay shouted. "He can't take off! The police cars are blocking the path!" "He's not trying to take off," Magnolia said grimly. "He's trying to ram the police cars. He's panicking." The massive 757 jerked forward. The cabin tilted as the nose gear turned sharply. Passengers in the back screamed. Clay knew he had seconds. He looked at the briefcase. He looked at the cockpit door. "Wyatt," Clay said, his voice deadly calm. "If that plane hits a police car, you're not going to prison for theft. You're going for vehicular manslaughter and domestic terrorism. You want a deal? You help me stop him." Wyatt looked up, eyes wide with terror. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the primal fear of a soft man in a hard situation. "How? The door is reinforced." "The hatch," Clay said, pointing to seat 1A. "The pass-through. Is it big enough for a person?" "No," Wyatt shook his head. "Just a bag." "Then we talk him down," Clay said. He grabbed the intercom handset from Selena. He pressed the button for all call, but then switched it to flight deck. "Rhodes!" Clay shouted into the phone. "This is Clay Wilder. I have the drives. I have the briefcase. Wyatt talked. We know everything." Silence. The engines revved louder. The plane was picking up speed, swinging its massive wing toward the terminal building. "Rhodes, listen to me," Clay continued. "You're 60 years old. You have a pension. You have a life. Right now, you're looking at conspiracy and theft. Maybe 5 years with a good lawyer. But if you ram that cruiser, if you hurt an officer, it's life without parole. It's over. Do you hear me? It ends today, either in a cell or in a coffin. Pull the throttle back." The plane shuddered. The wingtip was feet away from a lighting stanchion. "I have the drives, Everett," Clay lied, making his voice softer. "I'll destroy them. Just stop the plane. Don't throw your life away for a kid who already sold you out." On the floor, Wyatt looked indignant but stayed silent. For 10 heartbeats, the only sound was the screaming engines and the screams of the passengers in economy. Then, the thrust cut. The engines spooled down rapidly. The brakes hissed and squealed, throwing Clay against the bulkhead. The plane rocked to a stop. The silence that followed was deafening. A moment later, the cockpit door clicked. It swung open. Captain Everett Rhodes stood there. He looked deflated, a man whose gamble had failed spectacularly. He took off his hat and placed it on the jump seat. "Tell them," Rhodes whispered, his voice hoarse. "Tell them it was mechanical failure. The throttle stuck." Clay stepped forward, straightening his suit jacket. He looked at the captain, then down at Wyatt, then at the camera Briella was holding. "I'm a lawyer, Captain," Clay said. "I can spin a lot of things, but I can't spin the truth when it's recorded in 4K. He gestured to Briella. The main cabin door thumped. The jet bridge was realigned. The seal broke with a hiss. "Police! Hands on your heads!" A team of tactical officers stormed the cabin, weapons drawn. "Don't shoot!" Selena cried, dropping to her knees. Clay raised his hands slowly, calm amidst the storm. He looked at Wyatt Cole, who was curled in a ball on the floor of seat 1A. "Officer," Clay said, nodding toward Wyatt, "I believe that man is in my seat, and he's holding stolen property." The evacuation was chaotic. Because of the security threat, the police didn't just arrest Wyatt and Rhodes, they cleared the entire plane. Clay found himself standing on the tarmac, the heat of the engines still radiating in waves. The sun was setting, casting long, dramatic shadows across the concrete. He watched as Wyatt Cole was led away in handcuffs. The arrogant VP was weeping openly, pleading with the officers, blaming the pilot, blaming the airline, blaming everyone but himself. His expensive linen jacket was torn, his shoes scuffed, Then came Captain Rhodes. He walked with his head down, stripped of his epaulets, a sad end to a long career destroyed by greed. Clay felt a hand on his arm. It was Magnolia Pierce. She was leaning on her cane, looking fresh as a daisy despite the ordeal. "You handled that well, Mr. Wilder," she said. "I just wanted my seat, Ms. Pierce." Clay sighed, rubbing his temples. "You did more than that," she said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a card. It was thick cream-colored stock with gold embossing. Pierce Global Holdings. "My husband's company has been looking for a new general counsel, someone who doesn't blink when the engine's cut out. Call me." Clay took the card. "I might just do that." Briella Stone came running over, her phone still in her hand. "Clay! Clay! That was insane! I got it all! The live stream has 2 million viewers. Look at the comments. They're calling you the Sky Marshal lawyer." Clay grimaced. "Please tell me you didn't get my bad side." "You don't have a bad side," Briella grinned. "But seriously, Wyatt is trending. Seat stealer karma. People are digging up his old tweets. He's done. Harlan Tech's stock dropped 12% in the last 20 minutes. "The market reacts fast," Clay murmured. A stern-looking woman in a blazer approached them. She had an FBI badge on her belt. "Mr. Wilder, Special Agent Holloway, we need a statement, and thank you for the tip. We've been trying to nail Cole for months. We didn't know about the hard drives." "Happy to help, Agent," Clay said. "Can I ask, what happens to the flight?" "This plane is a crime scene," Holloway said. "It's not going anywhere. The airline is scrambling to find a replacement aircraft for the passengers, but it's going to be hours." Clay looked at the stranded passengers. Families, business people, the elderly. They were exhausted, angry, and hot. And it was all because one man felt entitled to a seat that wasn't his. "This isn't right," Clay said. "They shouldn't suffer for his crimes." He looked at Selena, who was sitting on a luggage cart, crying softly. She was likely worried about her job, about the investigation. Clay walked over to a quiet corner. "Selena," he said gently. She looked up, mascara running. "Mr. Wilder, I'm so sorry. I should have made him move. I was just scared." "I know," Clay said. "Power is scary. But you stood up when it mattered. You warned us about the door. You helped." "I'm going to get fired," she sniffled. "The captain, he was my boss." "You are not going to get fired," Clay said firmly. "In fact, I'm going to represent you in the internal inquiry, pro bono, and we're going to make sure the airline compensates every single person on this tarmac for the distress." Selena wiped her eyes. "Really?" "Really," Clay said. He turned back to Agent Holloway. "Agent, these people need water, food, and a lounge. Now, or I start talking to the press about how the FBI held innocent civilians on a hot tarmac without aid." Holloway sighed, but she signaled to a bus approaching the plane. "Buses are here. We're taking everyone to the VIP terminal." The VIP terminal was a stark contrast to the sweltering plane, but the mood was electric. The passengers knew what had happened. Word had spread. Briella's video had been shared around the waiting area. When Clay walked in, silence fell. Then someone started clapping. It was the young man from seat 4F. Then Magnolia joined in, then Selena. Soon the entire room of stranded passengers was applauding. Clay felt his face heat up. He wasn't used to applause outside of a courtroom verdict. He raised a hand, humble. "Please," he said. "I just wanted to get to London." "You saved us from a hijacker pilot!" a woman shouted. "You took down that jerk!" another man yelled. Clay walked over to a quiet corner, needing a moment. He sat down in a plush armchair, ironically very similar to seat 1A. He checked his phone. It was blowing up. Texts from his partners, emails from news outlets, and a message from Elias Thorne. "You really know how to make an exit, Clay. By the way, Harlan Tech just issued a press release firing Wyatt Cole. He's radioactive." Clay leaned back and closed his eyes. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him exhausted. Mind if I join you? It was Briella. She had put the phone away. She looked less like an influencer now and more like a tired girl. Free country, Clay said. Or at least a free lounge. I wanted to ask you something, she said, sitting opposite him. When you confronted him, you weren't angry. You were surgical. How do you do that? I would have been screaming. Screaming loses energy, Clay said. And it gives the opponent something to push back against. If you're a wall of stone, they break themselves trying to move you. Deep, Briella smiled. So what now? You missed your meeting in London. The merger, Clay remembered. He checked the time. He had missed the signing dinner. But he looked at his email. A message from the CEO of the company he was acquiring in London. Subject, saw the news. Body, Mr. Wilder, we saw the video. If you fight for your clients half as hard as you fought for that seat, we are in good hands. We will wait for you. Rescheduling for tomorrow. Clay smiled. Karma worked both ways. The meeting is safe, Clay said. Good, Briella said, because I think you have a new career path if you want it. Oh? Internet hero, she laughed. But seriously, Wyatt Cole represents everything people hate right now. The entitlement, the corruption. You standing up to him? It resonated. I'm just a lawyer, Briella. Not anymore, she said. Now you're the guy who reclaimed the seat. Just then, an airline representative in a crisp red suit walked into the lounge. She looked terrified as she approached Clay. Mr. Wilder? She squeaked. Yes? We have a replacement aircraft ready. It's a smaller jet, a private charter the airline has arranged to get you all to London immediately. Good, Clay said. And, she swallowed hard. The CEO of the airline called personally. He wants to offer you a voucher for... Clay held up a hand. I don't want a voucher. You don't? No, Clay stood up. I want an assurance. I want an assurance that Selena keeps her job and gets a commendation. I want an assurance that every passenger here gets full refund and triple miles. And for me? The rep braced herself. I just want seat 1A, Clay said. And I want nobody to argue with me about it. The rep nodded frantically. Done. It's yours. We blocked off the entire first-class cabin just for you and your friends. Clay looked at Magnolia and Briella. Well, ladies, looks like we're flying private. Magnolia laughed, tapping her cane. About time. As they gathered their things to board the new plane, Clay felt a sense of closure. But there was one loose thread. He walked over to the window of the terminal. Down below, he saw a police van. The back doors were open. Wyatt Cole was being loaded in. He looked up, his eyes scanning the windows of the terminal. For a second, their eyes met across the distance. Wyatt looked broken, a man who thought the world belonged to him, realizing he was just renting space. Clay didn't smirk. He didn't wave. He just adjusted his cuff, turned his back, and walked toward the gate. The flight was calling, and this time, the seat was waiting. 6 months had passed since the incident on Flight 77, but the world hadn't moved on. In the digital age, viral moments have a half-life, but Wilder v. Cole, as the internet dubbed it, had mutated from a meme into a movement. Clay Wilder sat in his corner office in Manhattan, the skyline glinting in the winter sun. His desk was piled high, not just with merger contracts, but with fan mail, interview requests, and deposition transcripts. He turned on the TV mounted on the wall. Briella Stone's face filled the screen. She was no longer just an influencer recording from row 3. She was now a correspondent for a major news network, covering the trial of the century. We are live outside the federal courthouse, Briella said, looking professional in a trench coat, though her green hair still peeked out from under a beanie. Today is the sentencing hearing for Wyatt Cole and former Captain Everett Rhodes. The charges range from grand larceny and corporate espionage to reckless endangerment and violating federal aviation security protocols. Clay muted the TV. He knew the charges. He had helped draft the prosecution's strategy as a special consultant. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Wilder, Ms. Pierce is here. Send her in." Magnolia Pierce swept into the room. She hadn't aged a day. If anything, the scandal had invigorated her. She was wearing a Chanel suit that probably cost more than Wyatt's bail bond. "Clay," she said, sitting down without asking, "I have the board's decision." Clay leaned forward. After the incident, Magnolia had made good on her offer. She had hired Clay's firm to audit her own company's logistics, fearing a similar rot to what they found at Harlan Tech. "And?" Clay asked. "Clean," she smiled. "But that's not why I'm here. I'm here about Harlan Tech." Clay raised an eyebrow. Harlan Tech, Wyatt's former employer, had been in a freefall since the news broke that their VP of logistics was stealing proprietary code. Their stock was trading for pennies. "I'm buying it," Magnolia said casually. "Hostile takeover. I'm buying the carcass of Wyatt's legacy." "That's aggressive," Clay noted. "It's business," Magnolia corrected. "But I need a CEO to run the restructuring. Someone who knows the law, knows the tech, and has a proven track record of taking out the trash." Clay paused. "You want me to run the company Wyatt Cole tried to steal?" "Poetic, isn't it?" Magnolia's eyes twinkled. "Imagine his face when he watches the news from prison and sees you sitting in his old boss's chair. It's the ultimate eviction, Clay." Clay stood up and walked to the window. It was tempting. It was incredibly satisfying. But he was a lawyer at heart. "I can't be CEO, Magnolia," Clay said, turning back. "I like the courtroom too much, but I know someone who needs a step up. Someone who handles pressure well and knows the logistics of that company better than anyone realized." "Who?" "There was a junior analyst at Harlan who flagged Wyatt's discrepancies months ago," Clay said. "Wyatt buried her report and fired her. I found her during discovery. Her name is Sarah. She's brilliant, and she's currently working at a Starbucks. Make her the VP. Let her take his seat." Magnolia tapped her chin with her cane. "You really believe in karma, don't you?" "I believe in balance," Clay said. "Wyatt took a seat he didn't earn. I'm just making sure the right people get to sit down." The courtroom was packed. It was a federal case, so cameras weren't allowed inside, but the sketch artists were working furiously. Wyatt Cole sat at the defense table. He looked hollow. The 6 months in remand had stripped away the expensive tan, the muscle mass, and the arrogance. He wore an orange jumpsuit that fit poorly. He looked small. Next to him sat Everett Rhodes. The former pilot looked resigned, staring at his hands. He had already taken a plea deal, agreeing to testify against the buyer of the stolen drives in London, a Russian syndicate that the FBI was now dismantling. Clay sat in the gallery near the back. He wasn't part of the prosecution team today. He was just a witness to the end. Next to him sat Selena. She was wearing a new uniform. She had been promoted to lead purser and was now training crews on conflict de-escalation. "All rise," the bailiff intoned. Judge Hargrave entered. She was a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for harsh sentences on white-collar crime. "Mr. Cole," Judge Hargrave said, peering over her glasses, "you have been found guilty on 12 counts. You showed a staggering lack of regard for the safety of 300 passengers. You attempted to steal intellectual property worth millions. And you did it all with an air of entitlement that this court finds frankly repulsive." Wyatt stood up, his legs shaking. "Your Honor, I made a mistake. I was under pressure. I have a gambling addiction." "Many people have addictions, Mr. Cole," the judge said icily. "They don't hijack planes. They don't threaten flight attendants." She looked down at her papers. "For the count of corporate espionage, I sentence you to 10 years. For the count of reckless endangerment, 5 years. Sentences to run consecutively." 15 years. A gasp went through the room. Wyatt's knees buckled. He grabbed the table for support. Furthermore, the judge continued, you are ordered to pay restitution to the airline and to every passenger on Flight 177. Your assets have been seized and will be liquidated. You are leaving this court with nothing. Wyatt turned his head. He scanned the gallery looking for a friendly face. There were none. His family had abandoned him. His connections had ghosted him. Then his eyes locked on Clay. Clay didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just nodded, a simple acknowledgement of the transaction completing. Action, reaction, theft, restitution. Wyatt was led away in cuffs, the chains rattling, a sound far less pleasant than the clinking of ice in a scotch glass. As the courtroom cleared, Rhodes was led past Clay. The pilot paused. I'm sorry, Rhodes whispered. I should have just flown the plane. Yes, Clay said softly. You should have. 1 year later. Clay Wilder walked through the terminal at JFK. He was heading to Tokyo this time. A new merger, a new deal. He walked past the newsstand. The cover of Time magazine featured a collage of faces. Clay, Selena, Briella, and Magnolia. The headline read, The Accountability Era, How One Flight Changed Corporate Culture. He smiled and kept walking. He reached the gate. The agent scanned his boarding pass. The machine beeped a happy green. Welcome back, Mr. Wilder, the agent beamed. We have you in 1A. Actually, Clay said, I'd like to make a change. The agent looked confused. Sir, 1A is the best seat. I know, Clay said, but I see a young Marine over there in the waiting area. He looks exhausted. He's flying coach. Clay pointed to a young man in fatigues, sleeping sitting up against his duffel bag. Upgrade him to 1A, Clay said. I'll take his seat in economy. Sir, are you sure? The agent asked, stunned. It's a 14-hour flight. I'm sure, Clay said. I've sat in the front. I know what it feels like. I think he needs it more today. Clay took the economy ticket. He walked onto the plane, walking past the first-class cabin. He saw the Marine settling into 1A, looking around in wide-eyed wonder as the flight attendant, it was Selena, smiling broadly, handed him a glass of champagne. Clay walked back to row 42. He found his seat, a middle seat between a teenager with headphones and a grandmother knitting a scarf. He sat down. It was cramped. His knees hit the seat in front. The air was a little stuffy, but as he buckled his belt, Clay Wilder felt lighter than he had in years. He realized that the power wasn't in the seat. The power was in the man sitting in it. He pulled out his laptop. He had work to do. The plane took off, climbing smoothly into the clouds. No drama, no theft, just a flight. And that was exactly how it was supposed to be. Clay Wilder didn't just win a seat. He won a war against the idea that some people matter more than others. Wyatt Cole thought his status was a shield, but he forgot that gravity pulls everyone down the same way. In the end, 15 years in a cell is a long time to think about legroom. This story isn't just about a plane ride. It's about standing your ground when the world tries to push you to the back. It's about the power of evidence, the strength of allies, and the undeniable force of karma. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold at 30,000 feet, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Share this with someone who needs a reminder to stand up for themselves and subscribe for more stories where the underdog bites back.